Alright, I've heard people say that Draft League is dead, and I cannot be bothered to watch whiny people talk about, like, Draft League's dead, Draft League's dead. I mean, to me, the pinnacle of Draft League, it really starts with a story of, false promises, and realistically speaking, this is a game that you see on your screen that will never be replicated again in terms of hype. And when I talk about hype, there are two people in this community that represent the absolute Adonis of hype. Like, I'm telling you now, when this matchup was announced, there were people buzzing. This was the game that was going to finally end the age-old conundrum. So, on the left-hand side of the screen with the Baker, we're going to see my boy Iron Flash Gaming, also known as Tony Zazzo. And on the right hand side, we're going to see the Gypsy King, also known as Dylan. Now, this is a final that needs a bit of context, but it will highlight to you what Draft League has been missing by encapsulating a moment that is now 4 years old and gives you one of the greatest stories that we've heard in Draft League. Now, I know that a lot of people are saying, oh, but we've heard all these draft people say that Draft League is dead. I'm telling you now that Draft League is no bigger than the scene that it is. There is a reason why people continually play this format and old formats because of the fun and the social elements that surround it. The game, in terms of competitiveness, is a way to have an avenue where using your Pokemon that may be your favorite is more so the desire, rather than using some goon squad that you found on Rate My Team forums and Smolgun.com, or potentially going into the hyper-focused environment of capitalistic adventures of VGC. Now, there are going to be multiple things that we talk about to give you really the scene about who we start with. So firstly, we're going to start with the right. This is Gypsy King. Now, this is a guy that has played in his second season of NPL, has lost from memory about 2 or 3 games, and the losses were to a guy named Togavor. Now, Togavor is important to give you a bit of context. Togavor, to my knowledge, doesn't play draft anymore, but back in the day, he was probably maybe around a top 5 or top 10 player that was known. Also, it's important to note that the interconnectedness of the community means that some people's ratings are inflated because the community was not as widely known as it is today. There weren't tools like, for example, DPL or TDT, where you have, the influx of various different people, and it's particularly, different levels of leagues. I think that, like, a good example of something that shows me how much more, how much more knowledge people have of the communities, when you look at, like, DPL, for example, and there's 200 to 300 people in the server. Now, Gypsy King is the epitome of the draft scene at the moment. He's a man that's come off one of the most dominant seasons of NPL, winning undefeated, absolutely destroying anyone and their dog who thought they were top shit. And this is important context, because what this gives is it gives the mountain of Draft League at the stage. This is the mountain that someone needs to climb. People are worried, and this was a legitimate concern back in the day, that who would stop Gypsy King? He is the man, the myth, the legend himself, the Dylan. He's absolutely on a tear, and he comes in to the second season of NPL, where his main rival at the time in terms of what people thought was competitive, being the Matty Brolic, has taken some leave from Draft League. Now, on the left, we see the challenger. The challenger is the man himself, Iron Flash Gaming, aka Big Tony Zazzo, who is a man that, he knows how to get the sauce. He has been absolutely dominant, and for a vast majority of Draft League kids, this is a game where people are saying, okay, these are 2 of the best players that we know of, maybe 2 of the best players that exist, and they're going to play in this NPL final. But there really needs to be more context to this. Why was Iron Flash Gaming a guy that was predicted to do really well, someone that we just heard about? And the best reason for that is because back in the day, getting into draft leagues was quite exclusive. So, for example, you would play with your mates. There's the Kick days, the Skype days. Discord was brand new. And this is the NPL, the National Pokemon League. This is a league that became very prominent, mainly due to the work of Jolt at the time, who worked with the token minorities, which had like Jolt, Styx, Danza, and the boy, like Trevsiel was part of it, and there's a few peripheral, Keegan, there's a few peripheral characters that we need to know of. Now, when you think about those peripheral characters, what made the NPL the stage that it was it was arguably one of the best Showdown leagues. And this is just a small part of the Showdown draft community that has really encapsulated in a moment of time. Now, remember how I said that Gypsy King had only, a handful of losses? The second loss was actually quite controversial. And when I say controversial, the reason was that the Iron Flash Gaming, the big popper, had won with what they refer to as normal spam. A Swords Dance crit Silvally double edge, something along those lines. And we're in this moment of time that I don't think you can replicate. And I'm going to talk about, various other games and why do they not fit the hype. The reason that Draft League sort of effectively, didn't have that hype again is it doesn't seem to be a culmination of characters that can grip the Draft League community like it does. No one's uploading, there's been multiple changes to the way draft has occurred. And this is a moment in time that I think a lot of draft fans wish they could re-encapsulate. So the game itself is not important because what we need to understand is tension, rivalry, drive, the characters of the Draft League community make it important. So Gypsy is this really humble guy on the outside. He's a guy that is, quite comprehensively easily won the NPL the previous season. He comes in the next season. He's predicted to do well. But there's something off. There's, that presence. There's the moment that you look at someone and you think to yourself, that is the guy that people will now want to beat. He's the guy that most people would half consider a dark horse, but also at the same time, someone who is not being slept on. It's Iron Flash Gaming. This is a guy that not too long ago in distant memory came second in Summer Showdown, which used to be one of the biggest tournaments there was. This was I think from memory back in the day, there was 128 in ORAS. But what makes this game even more enthralling is if you were someone that only pigeonholed yourself into the NPL, you would have missed that this has been a rivalry that's been going on and known to various different people for a number of years. In fact, if we want to go through it, Iron Flash Gaming actually has a video that is, predates this. So we want to shout out to L5 for the video, but when we look at this, we look at this man. This man loves Milk Tank, but if we go back through what is, oh my goodness, this, you can just really tell back in the day just how different it was. There is a video, if I can find it, or maybe it's not there anymore, but there was a game that was, I think, a couple of years ago that was between Zazo and, Dylan. I can't find it, unfortunately. It was a game, BCF, right? So this is 5 years ago. When we look at the L5 date, this is a game that was 4 years ago, if we go back.
These sets are gonna...
Whoa, King L5, don't copyright strike me. So this is a BCF, which is a game, another league. But there's more things happening in the community. The GBA at the time is one of the biggest leagues. It's the biggest upload league. And just like the NPL, they have numerous various characters, that make the league itself. One of the most popular characters in that league is a man that we simply know as the man name known as A-Drive. A-Drive is a guy these days that's most notably known for his shiny hunting. But back in the day, he was one of the most premier players in the GBA. And you can see here that the GBA was a draft league that was done on Wi-Fi. In fact, the GBA would be the second most popular league in terms of Wi-Fi, in my opinion, that existed. The most popular was the UCL. The UCL was something that put Draft League on the map, and it was won by Pokeaim back in the day, and it was quite simplistic. But what people don't seem to forget is that the Draft League itself was never about, this ultra competitiveness. It was something that people could see in a silo, and realistically, the reason why Draft League, for a lot of people, has gotten stale is that these once characters don't exist anymore. And it's not so much that these characters cannot exist, it's that we have changed, we have gotten older, and there's several different things that I want to talk about. But the main thing to me in my eyes is that as people have gotten older, people's lives have changed, people's priorities have changed, and there are several different events that have occurred over these years that will change the scope of, change the scope of Draft League. It's amazing to me how many people upload these, dramas, but these are the same people that if they don't want to push it in the face of themselves, they won't find solutions. They'll find problems. I want to make a really quick note on this, that I think that this is a video that I could go on about for hours. Just the moments, the ways in which that when you go back through some of the archives of Draft League, the stories that are there. In fact, some of those people that I've described to you may not even be people that were heroes. There's most famously Jolt became the villain of the Draft League community after his team was banned after Season 1 in the DPL for ghosting. Someone like Jolt became the villain, which seemed odd because he once was the hero. And when we look at that, we need to understand, how do these moments shape the Draft League today? In fact, I think the main issue with Draft League has become, it's actually YouTube itself. Back when we were playing, so back in the day, 7 years ago, I was 16. I remember this was a time when people wanted to upload. People thought we could be the next A Drive. We could make the $100, $100 videos. But in reality, we were just some kids in a basement recording and chopping up games. And, the set's exactly that. It's something that, while we looked at a microcosm of the Draft League community, which has been Wi-Fi has changed a lot. In fact, one of the main things that I think has hampered Wi-Fi has been the fact that we've changed consoles. If you look at another competitive aspect of Pokemon, such as VGC, we often see that console changes are one of the big reasons why Pokemon loses its niche. In fact, sometimes it can be beneficial. So, for example, when we went to the 3DS, sometimes we lost a few players from the DS days. But when we went from the 3DS to the Switch had enough titles that it made more people want to come into the scene. However, they don't see the same rivalries. In fact, to say that VGC is something that has been digressing, or the player pools, is something that would most Draft League people would say similar. But there's some moments in this that make it really antithesize what the Draft League community was. In fact, one of the best ones is actually this video from A Drive, which I will mute quickly, show you the ads because I want him to make sure he gets that ad revenue of what is the Draft League. This is a game that's happened 7 years ago, and it's most infamously known for one moment in Draft League. And I think it's important that when we consider what happens in Draft League, that those one moments can be the difference between a great season and an old season. So we go through to this end of this video, and we are going to see Dan Clapp actually lose this game in a 4-2 position. And the reason for this is because, ironically, he doesn't remember that his Mew has Taunt, and he lets the Doublade set up to about +6 and win the game. Now, you have to remember that when we think about this, in this moment, why is this the reason that this game is so popular? Was it the fact that it was a gigantic choke, or was the GBA at the time, was this one of the most prominent things? In fact, his opponent in this game is Miguel, and Miguel is known for later on in Pokemon for leaving the scene, and he's been one of the Draft League players that people have wanted to come back. And I think what this really shows us in terms of is Draft League dying, is the fact that there's been just so many changes. In fact, I can't even remember the last time Dan did a video. I mean, look, if you want to really see some like how popular Draft League was, look at the GBA. There's nearly 100,000 views on this video from 2015. In fact, these logos are probably something that's not even many people would recognize, unless you've been back in the day. And what we see from this is that another good example is a guy named Shady Penguin, who moves on famously to Yu-Gi-Oh! He leaves Draft League. And when I think that, how do you make Wi-Fi Draft League more entertaining? It's about the story. The story is everyone wants the championship, but no one's willing to see what makes the championship. So a good example at the moment is in the NFL, the Cleveland Browns have made the finals, or the Super Bowl. And the thing that makes it quite interesting is the fact that this was a team that a couple years ago had only won like 6 games. They drafted an unknown quarterback known as Joe Burrow, and he wins. He's taken them to the Super Bowl, which is one of the biggest scenes on the stage. And I want to talk about a few of the issues that occurred around this time in Draft League that have sort of been the gate point of why I think Draft League has become unpopular to upload. One of the biggest reasons in my eyes is actually cancelling. Now, cancelling was something that was sort of not really a thing back in the day, but there was a few incidents. I can't repeat exactly all of them word by word, but one of the best examples is that the Pokemon Premier League, who back in the day was one of the biggest draft leagues, actually banned me for something that someone else said. Now, I don't really want to go into it, but it was a huge controversy because the reason was this was one of the first examples of being cancelled. In fact, I think cancel culture today is really exemplified by people like James Gunn, who was the creator of the Marvel Avenger movies. And that's where, I think if you upload, people can't do the characters they once did. In fact, in the GBA, Steve actually brings in a character known as the Great Battler X, who is this alt personality to Steve. In fact, you can't even do it. I remember I tried it one season in the UBL, I think it was, and people were like, that's so disrespectful. I was like, yeah, that's the point of the character. And, I think as well that the main other thing has been that bloody battle timer. That is rubbish. And I think that a lot of draft leagues now all look the same stock standard because there's no real difference between them. There is no draft league upload requirement anymore. What's the point? Why would you want to upload it? It's barely getting any views. I mean, I know people that, I kid you not, can upload a video of Pokemon and get like 10 views. They can upload a video of Zelda, for example, and get 1,000 views. It's not hard to see why this game, with dwindling popularity, is something that is only really seen from a YouTube focal point. As I said before, the stories of Draft League is what made it the Draft League. And when we look at something like Iron Flash Gaming versus Gypsy King, it was a rivalry that naturally formed. I'm pretty sure from memory in Season 5 that George wins it, I think, off the top of my head. And it's one of the seasons where a lot of people don't expect George to win. I think from memory he beats A-Drive, or that might be Season 6. But this is another good example of where the GBA will ironically be where Zazu plays and uploads his last YouTube league, as it ends in a mid-controversy because of using Baton Pass, the fact that rules weren't very well documented. But everyone else knew that Zazu was the king. He was the champion. And at this moment, when we are looking at the NPL, what we're really seeing is a focal point in a moment of time. In fact, I think it's quite ironic that a lot of people that are complaining about the uploading of Draft League and why it's dying is because we've lost that natural chemistry. People don't want to bait people anymore. People don't want to play different people. Oh no, don't like it. There's some people I dislike in this community, but look, a game's a game. Like, scheduling's AIDS. That's probably one of the other things that's contributed to it, is this time zones, and with people getting older, there's more responsibilities. People have work, people have school. The community's growing up. And I think while you can focus on the negatives, focus on the positives. And I think that naturally, if you focus on the positives, there's a lot of good that comes out of it. So while the people say, oh, for example, the GBA is dying, to me, a good example of someone who seems to keep going with Draft League is this guy here, Irish Emerald. This is a guy that some people may not like. I think he's very, very polite. And he's someone that, to me, just does his best. And I think, just to give you an example of this guy, so this guy's got so many videos. But if we take a look at, like, for example, if we went to most popular, sort by most popular, Shiny Hunting, very good. But if we look at some of the Draft League, for example, when it comes up, alright, see, 310 views. That's his most popular Draft League video. It's 310 views. Whereas if you compare it to this, Shiny Hunting, 1.9. Oh, hang on. There's a draft. Wexford. Yeah, okay, so there's draft analysis. Now, when we look at this, it gives us another microcosm. This is someone that, to my knowledge, has been around since USM and has played continuously throughout. And I've even noticed that with him, that he's stopped uploading leagues because there doesn't seem to be that interest. And I think the reason for that is that Gen 8 Wi-Fi has decided to continue using that Gen 8 NAT decks, which is that you can use Megas, which you can't do on Cart, which makes it difficult. So when we look at the difficulties, we need to also look at solutions. So to me, by having some very good tiers, you can make the game more interesting. So for example, Dragapult is one of the most controversial mons in the tier from my eyes. Like, it's just ridiculous. Like, it nearly get banned in OU. I think I've seen Urshifu Dark, for example, which is another just stupid Pokemon. And, you know, I think what you want to look at is some of those mons and say, well, how do we actually objectively make the tiers better? You know, in fact, a good example of this is that in Gen 8, in USUM, Sun and Moon format, they eventually banned Mega Alakazam. Mega Alakazam was a mon that not many people thought was that great to begin with in the start of that tier. Even though it has phenomenal space stats, it became very popular because of the fact that it was a Mega Lati counter in OU, because it could come in on Earthquake with Trace and then take a Levitate, and it became an absolute phenom. In fact, I think one of the main things that people forget is that uploading Draft League isn't the only sign of strength. As I said, I think the interconnectedness of communities now that we see so many more people talking and things like that makes it a larger community. When we're looking at back in those pinnacles, you know, it's something that we can only have once or twice. In fact, I'd be very interested as a comment question of the day for people to write what is like one of their best battles. In fact, to give you an example of why I think Draft League has failed, I can ironically bring you up Under the Radar. Now, Under the Radar is a guy that, you know, played in various leagues, very, I'd say, you know, above average player in terms of strength, but under the radar versus a guy named known as Bill Standish. Bill Standish is a individual who was a little bit controversial back in the day. Now, when we look at it, we want to look at, for example, there was this league called the P4G. So what we want to look at is, let's look at the P4G. So this is Kelly. No, Craig Kelly, we don't want to watch you. So here are my thoughts on the draft community, Spectria. So we see, you know, there's a few mons getting uploaded. But I think this is, if I can find the game, I think it'll be a good example. But I think from memory, it actually doesn't get uploaded, if I'm right. Oh yeah, WBE is a good example when Wolf and Aaron Zhang were getting involved in draft, which was interesting. Yeah, this is a good example of a game. So BBL semifinals, Kelly loses to me. He just uploads a team builder. He doesn't upload the game. If I find the P4G one, it would be another good sort of interesting one for people to sort of see. WB. Good old Gypsy, absolutely smacking people. This is going to take a while to find, but it's funny. So, to me, let me see if I can find it. XBL, that was another interesting league. P4G finals. Okay. So the battle gets uploaded, and this is another interesting one, because this is, when I talk about cancelling, there was a Twitlonger. You know, like these are like, this just shows you back in the day. Yeah. So like, there was actually like a Twitlonger written about Bill after he won this. And in fact, I remember that I think Kelly said he didn't try. Actually, let's see if we can find the audio.
What's going on, everyone? My name is Under the Radar, and welcome back to the P4G. This is going to be the finals. So, a couple of things. This is a post-com. I normally do not do post-coms on my channel. I'm doing a post-com because I did record it live. However, whenever I originally did the game live, I did it with Bill and Call, and we had a lot of fun with it. It was a really good time. However, I realized I didn't talk strategy the entire game, and for the finals, I feel like I should do that. I didn't.
Alright, so we're 30 seconds into this video, and see how he's already devalued finals. The reason he's devalued finals there is by saying, oh, I've recorded this many times with Bill and Cole, but I think for finals we should discuss commentary. So that's a good example of how you devalue a game. Remember when I said at the start about the pinnacle was Gypsy King versus Iron Flash Gaming? There's nothing there that suggests that people would be like, oh, this isn't going to be a good game. In fact, it ends in one of the closest games of Draft League, in terms of a final that I can think of. You know, there's also other notable finals. You know, over the years as well, we have like John W versus Hykertoad is my understanding of another common final. Zazu plays in a lot of finals. So does Gypsy. Matty Brolick as well plays in one. Aki. Like there's so many people. Like you can't remember everyone. So let's continue. Let's hear Kelly out on this. Like let's see what else you want.
Talk about my mindset. I didn't talk about my moves. I didn't talk about really much of anything that I feel like I should have talked about. So I'm going to post comment to give you guys more detail into everything. If you want, though, I will put that game up in an unlisted link down in the description below. So if you want to go look at that, you are more than welcome to. And because of that, I'm also not going to edit this video very much. I'm just going to record it and then put it up. So I'm sorry that I don't have the layout, but that's just how I think it'd be easier for me to get up the live com for the people that want to see live com, or the post com for people who don't really care about live coms. Anyway, let's go ahead and take a look at Bill's team. He brings Mega Sharpedo, Kyurem Black, Kartana, Chandelure, Clefable, and Reuniclus. First things first, he does not bring Galvantula. That literally screws me over from the very start because I prepped this team heavily.
Alright, so we can see that, like, I'm not going to bring up additional controversy because Kelly didn't say it in the video, but there was also known tension in this between Bill and, what's his name? Kyle A, I think it was. I don't even know if that guy still uploads. Let's see. Sycamore. Kyle A. Does he still upload? This page is not available. Interesting. Yeah, so we can see there that we devalued what the finals is at that point in time by saying we should discuss strategy and things like that. Look, it gives you guys an example of something where I think natural tension can be built. Imagine if Kelly in this game talks about I'm playing Bill Standish in this final, who has been one of the he beat Leo, he used Scarf, Claydol, and froze everything. What an idiot! And you could do it that way. Whereas by some of these other troops, we sort of see how these finals are devalued. Another good example of a final was Randy HLD Productions has a few. Randy HLD Productions. I want Randy. Tom Z comes up. HLD Productions. Classic Randy. So, let's have a look. Yeah, so Clash of the Titans is a good one, a good example. Tom Z. Let's see D-League. So this is another interesting person, right? So Randy, when he plays in the D-League, makes finals, and not this finals, the season before, and people don't rate him. He made finals. Did he win this, or did he lose?
What is good, Rangers fans?
Yes, Randy! Oh, what a man. What a man. So this is another guy that doesn't upload anymore. Now, what made Randy different? And I want to make sure that if you're a Wi-Fi creator, you understand the importance of uniqueness. What made Randy different was he was a guy that didn't come through the traditional avenues of Draft League. In fact, Draft League at the time to get into the GBA was a tryout, and they did video submission. Something that I don't know if it still occurs. I think it's a lot more based on battling. So what made Randy different was he used see the layout on screen? It's pretty. It's something that, his quality was amazing. I remember people used to say Randy. Oh, his quality was amazing. In fact, this is another great example of a finals between two people that show tension. So the Texas Rangers is coached by Randy. Randy's a no-name. He controversially picks Tapu Koko round 1 and then round 2 Hawlucha. Now, in this Draft League format, not many people decided that was a good call, but Randy did. And this is a game that's, coming up to a little bit over 4 years. So this happens after, if I'm getting the memory right, after Gypsy v Zazu, or it might be before. No, I think it's definitely after. I'm getting my timeline middle scoop, but it's important to note that it happens in the same year. And Randy is playing Leo. Now, what makes Leo important to note about this is Leo is known in this stage just to want to play the game, and he's, in between trying to get into the GBA main league, but they want him to play in the D League first, which is fair enough. So back in the day as well, the idea would be if you weren't good enough for the main league, you'd play in the D League and work your way up. Now, in fact, I don't actually see too many D Leagues these days. A lot of the times, the D in D League stands for the quality of games. Not that I watch many, but when I do, I just sort of tell. Whereas back in the day, the D stand for development. So I think if you want to create the ecosystem, you need to get people like enjoyed. So this is Randy, and he's playing Leo. So this is a big game. I want to see who wins this. I think Randy's told me like so many times it's Leo, but I just want to rewatch it. I love Randy. Let's have a look. Okay, so I think the Raichu wins it from memory. Okay, so ready? Let's hear Randy end the game.
Thank you all for the support, man. Leo's a great guy. Hopefully he gets into the GBA Season 8. I don't know, man. I think I probably overthought this matchup. I stressed over the week. I mean, like I say stressed, but it wasn't really that big of...
Okay, so the important thing to note about this with Randy is Randy's come to the end of the game. You can tell he's giving his hardest. He's just bad. Sorry, Randy. And he thanks his opponent. He thanks the fans. And this is a pivotal moment of Randy. Because Randy, as many people like knew back in the day, was this guy that when he was announced in GBA, people were like, who are you? And I think that's what you need. You need those, who are you? And let them come through with the quality of their videos. Like, look at the layout. Look how clean this layout is. Like, oh, it's giving me goosebumps in memory. But again, this is where the story aspect of Draft League comes in handy. You're never going to get this sort of draft, these stories anywhere else. And the story of Draft League is always going to be more important. And in fact, I could talk about drama for ages. And there's so many examples. Like the pinnacle game that I'm talking about with Gypsy v Zazo, the next season, the finals in contention, because Zazo steps in to take over Gypsy, I think, or Maddie, to play Asta J. Because there was a controversial, I think, someone got timed, and then they didn't want to play the final. The PPL disbanded. Again, I think that's because of Bill. Stupid Bill. But, controversy will always occur. And I think if you're someone that is on the fence about these draft leagues and you don't know how much commitment you can give them, maybe not uploading the league is best for you. In fact, if you are someone that enjoys uploading, then why not upload them? And again, it doesn't need to be this tirade of what's better, is the draft league community dying? I think it's like anything. People love drama. People fester in drama. In fact, I can't even be bothered to watch, is Draft League dying? Because I can know for a fact that, this is a guy who left the scene for, 3 years, comes back, and it seems like as live as ever, but just on Showdown. Not one person is going to ever be bigger than the community. And in fact, I think it's important that we look at what were these games. In fact, just to give you an idea of how popular the Gypsy vs Zazo matchup is. So we look at DPL. Zazo vs Gypsy. Let's see if this one comes up. Okay, so this is 2 years ago, right? So remember, this is a rivalry that happened 4 years ago, 4 years previously, right? And they come back in a tiebreak. Again, natural tension. Tiebreak is a very important game, and by now, a lot of people know Gypsy and Zazo are friends, or friendly in GBA, not GBA, in MPL. But again, this is what makes these games special. In fact, I've probably highlighted the microcosm that I'm aware of. I don't even know everyone's full story. And I think the way that if you are someone that's worried that Draft League's dying because you don't enjoy playing Wi-Fi upload leagues where you have to gen and you have to play Dragapult every week, maybe it's better to play in a Natdex league where they, limit Dragapult. Or in fact, if you don't enjoy that, you may as well, look into other leagues. In fact, I've noticed that there's a few legacy leagues. And I think there's a whole range of issues. In fact, one of the most in innovative ways, in a way, it was in Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, we started getting bored of traditional standard draft leagues, so we looked into Ubers. And Ubers was ran by, sort of created with BBL, and BBL was quite impressive. They got Gypsy one season, Gypsy won it. And this was commissioned by Liv, who at the time went by a different name. And the league where it did really well was invested in Grant Graphics, High Velocity Boy. His graphics were amazing. The coaches seem to be there, and the atmosphere seems to be there. And I think if you can put all those three together, you can Draft League is never really going to die. It's just who do you play it with. And in fact, sometimes changing faces is great. I think instead of being so scared of change, embrace it. I think as well, if you enjoy playing Draft League, I've missed it over the last 3 years. But as I said, I got older. I want to focus on life. And now I'm come back to play in a few. So you'll see the TDT run. And, I think from there, it's important to understand why these natural tensions are so popular. In fact, as well, as something that can gather the audience to, have the story be told. In fact, as well, if you are someone that misses uploads in Draft League tournaments or Draft League games, life gets in the way of things. In fact, what also killed Draft League at one stage was that people were uploading a week in advance, and that killed the hype because people played a week in advance and then find the results. And then we used to raid the GBA doc in the Fantasy League. Mr. Murkrow, you scoose, or White, or Y as they go by now these days. And it's something that back in the day, we always used to run amok. We've gotten older. The people, some of these people are now part of the furniture. I'm not going to go through every controversy because, as I said, there's so many I could talk about. And I think that what you want to think about is just, if you enjoy the game or not. And if you enjoy the game, find people that are like-minded. That's why I don't play on Sword and Shield anymore. I don't play Sword and Shield. I don't even know who the champion is. I think it's Sixfoot Hacks. Praise the king. But this, I think as well, it's when you look at these pinnacle moments of draft, it has to be what is your pinnacle moment. In fact, you never know. I think as well, something I didn't really talk about was, I think what also killed a lot of the Draft League influx of things was casual players, because King Nappy got done for, or not done, I don't want to say, but there was a lot of allegations against King Nappy, which is, don't have to look too hard to find. Also, Duncan Knee-Deep used to be the main villain of the Draft League community because he's easy. Just never played in one. But, I think it's like anything. If you enjoy it, you enjoy it. If you don't, you don't. And, if you don't enjoy it, what's the point in playing it? So look, synopsis, TLDR. Is Draft League dead? No. Is there people that are clinging on to nostalgia because they're boomers? Yes, that's me. What is the pinnacle moment of draft in Burb's opinion? Look, Iron Flash Gaming versus Gypsy King, NPL season, whatever. In fact, it's a good game when other people start commentating over it. And also as well, it's important that, have fun, stay safe. And remember, Pokemon's a meme, but the bigger meme is selling your team logo as an NFT. Alright, catch ya.